So I wanted to change the energy a little bit. I've been talking about things like recently what I don't like about modern fighting games, for instance, and a lot of the problem solving I try to do on this channel has to do with like beating things that people complain about or they don't like that much. So today I wanted to change it up and talk about why I think this game, Dragon Ball FighterZ, is one of the most important fighting games that have come out in recent times. So the first thing is neutral, and more specifically is movement. So when we talk about neutral in Dragon Ball FighterZ or any other type of fighting game, we are usually talking about the phase where nobody's directly attacking each other. So no one is blocking, no one is being comboed, no one is being knocked down. We're just kind of running across the screen. Now, Dragon Ball has a mechanic that really changes the way neutral is played that's really important. And that is this, the Super Dash. Super Dash does a lot of things at the same time, and I've talked about this mechanic on this channel, but it's mostly about how do you fight this mechanic. This mechanic is really important to the game. The game is totally balanced around this mechanic. Super Dash is a move that tracks to your opponent's location. It does three really important things at the same time. For starters, it solves the basic neutral problem. How do I get over there? When someone hasn't played a fighting game and they play one for the first time, usually when they play someone a little bit better than them to someone who's a top player, they have to worry about movement. How do I get at my opponent? Super Dash is a mechanic that does it with the press of a button. Knowing the potential for how strong a mechanic like this is, there is this little bounce off that happens when you do it. This is pretty important. So for those of you watching who don't know what frames are, this game and basically all other fighting games all run at 60 frames per second, and we've gotten to the point where we count these frames and we could tell how much advantage that we have. So for example, this super cool wind up punch is +1. That means I recover 1 frame faster than my opponent. I can act before my opponent. Now Super Dash though is 0 on block, meaning we can move at the same time. And it doesn't matter where we are on the screen, either very far away from the top rope or point blank. Super Dash will always be 0 on block and you bounce away. So when you start the game, you don't realize this, but this bounce back is one of the biggest things that balances Super Dash. If you do not bounce back like that, then it would be pretty difficult for the opponent to deal with. Because of this bounce back, you usually have to do something like call an assist to protect you, or do a special move, which you can't cancel, because you can't cancel the Super Dash on block. So your opponent can kind of interact there. So your opponent can try to defend or get away rather than be forced guaranteed into block stun. Done correctly though, Super Dash can be away from going to neutral, aka neither of us are attacking each other, to offense, which is really strong, but it's not guaranteed. You have to build it the right way. So for the new player, it gives them a way to approach. For the more advanced player, it gives ways to do clever approaches or structures that give them a big advantage. So next, I want to talk about characters and the game's approach to characters. I've talked about other games that I've played, and recently I've been getting back into Guilty Gear because Axit Core has a rollback, which Dragon Ball FighterZ needs. Now Guilty Gear though, these characters are like a project. They're very in-depth, very different from each other. Everything works differently and you have to apply it to all the characters who also work differently. Dragon Ball is not quite like that. Dragon Ball kind of takes a Smash approach where most of the characters are somewhat homogenous. And what I mean by this is once you learn stuff with characters like Goku or SSJ Vegeta, you can apply them to basically all the characters. So for example, here is a basic combo with SSJ Goku. This is the first combo that most people will tell you to learn. SSJ Vegeta, same exact combo. Base Vegeta, same exact combo. Once you learn a combo with SSJ Goku, you can apply it to around half the cast or more. Similarly, the basic concept behind Ki Blast. So everyone has a projectile on the S button. It's a Ki Blast, just like Dragon Ball. Now at a baseline, you can fire one, you can fire a lot, and you can fire them in the air. Once somebody teaches you the basic concept of Ki Blast zoning, you could do it the same with multiple characters. So to show this off, I made a quick dummy recording where the opponent is going to super dash at me or he's going to just block. So the basic idea is when the opponent super dashes, I need to anti-air. When the opponent super dashes, I can cancel my normals into 2H because the ki blasts are technically touching them. So the way you go about doing this is you just fire a couple. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, and I could do it the exact same way with SSJ Goku. A lot of these ideas and concepts, while they're tweaked by character, almost all the characters have them. There are some very unique characters in the game for the character specialists out there, but for the most part, once you learn something about the game, you can apply it to everybody pretty much immediately. That's really, really important, especially considering this is a game where you have to play multiple characters. Next, I want to talk about problem solving. This game has a pretty unique answer to really common problems that appear in fighting games that really drive people off from playing when they start. So there's 3 things to talk about here: how knockdown works, how zoning works, and how mix-ups work. In games like SF4, even characters like Ryu had ways that could knock you down and kind of mix you up really hard until death. And of course, the faster-paced anime fighting game genre tends to be known for powerful knockdowns. Dragon Ball, compared to other games, gives you way more options on knockdown. Dragon Ball lets you do a backflip up in the air, just flip away, stand up in place, or lets you wait on the ground, and you can control how fast you get up here. This does 2 things at the same time. One is that it makes it pretty hard to do setups mid-screen. So for example, you can see here that if I tech back, he catches me with a safe jump. If I tech up, he still catches me. If I tech downwards, he misses and goes over me. And if I stand up in place, he misses and goes over me. The point being that a single character can't generally cover all the options. They either want you to spend some type of resource or they want you to get the opponent in the corner. It's one of the reasons why level 3 are so valuable to the game. It costs 3 bars, but it gives us something we really don't get generally anywhere: a hard knockdown where the opponent has to get up at the same timing. The other thing that this does is that in the corner, it makes it so characters that aren't designed to mix you up really hard can't always get it. Broly is a grappler, so you don't expect him to be beating you with like high lows on knockdown like that. So the defender can choose to vary their timing a little bit and make the opponent work. This type of interaction is actually very common in the game, where the game gives everybody specific responses to really normally overwhelming situations. So while I have my great friend Z Broly here, we can talk about mix-up and how the game goes about it. So since the game has come out, they've taken a lot of mix-ups out of the game, or they've changed them in ways that people either may not necessarily realize they still get a mix-up there, or you have to go about it a different way, or there's a gap where the defender can't interact. But I think command grab characters show what the developers want as far as offense and defense more than anything else. Why? Because command grab characters rely on poking or throwing for their mix-up. The response to pokes are simple: you block, and the response to throw is simple: you can jump or you can mash. If I'm wrong, he's going to jump and he escapes. So it's very clear for the defender how to deal with these types of mix-ups. I think the developers really want to do this, and it's a pretty good solution to overwhelming offense. And then last would be zoning. People tend to zone with ki blast, Broly being one of the best ones we have in the game. Now it might feel really powerful because he can aim it, but this game gives us ways to deal with this. Like knockdown and mix-up, the game gives basically everybody the same ways to deal with this. We're going back to our old buddy, Super Dash. Super Dash is that auto-tracking, auto-approach move. It also beats the standard projectile in the game, the S button. So somebody can't just fire ki blast non-stop. They have to make sure that they're also watching for Super Dash, which we showed before. This makes a much more direct interaction. It can be a kind of stressful one too, depending on your character, because while you're shooting these ki blasts, you have to also be paying attention to whether or not they Super Dash. And while the full screen Super Dash is pretty slow, for reference, 34 frames is a little bit over half a second. The closer you are, the faster the Super Dash is. So the person who's trying to zone with Ki Blast has to stay very aware of the threat of Super Dash and pay attention to how far their opponent is away from them. Since you can apply this to all characters, it doesn't matter if you're playing Gotenks or Broly. Maybe Roshi is a exception to this. But when you pick up a new character, you know at a baseline how to deal with all these things because pretty much all the characters deal with them in the same way. And the last thing is the power of the IP itself. So the most important thing about this game is that it's a fighting game with Dragon Ball characters. Back in 2014, ArcSys released Guilty Gear Xrd Sign. The game was gorgeous, and apparently they're the only company who's really good at doing this type of animation. I remember playing the game. I played that game competitively for years, and I remember thinking, why don't they just make anime fighters? But since Dragon Ball FighterZ has come out, they've made another game in a similar lane called Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Now, of course, it's cool that everyone's favorite IPs might have the chance to get a fighting game, but you also have to consider what other types of fighting games are out right now. So I would say for the modern fighting game age, we have games like SF5, Mortal Kombat 10 and 11, Injustice 2, and Smash Ultimate. And of course, for you 3D guys, Tekken 7. So basically, out of these games, you have Smash, which also relies on its IPs, like Dragon Ball. And the other games are pretty much legacy games. Mortal Kombat is on its 11th iteration. Tekken is on its 7th iteration. Street Fighter is on its 5th, but the game has many patches. So it's pretty uncommon that developers make a brand new IP and expect it to go mainstream. A lot of them either rely on existing ones or they rely on other IPs. We had what was called the fighting game Dark Ages, even though it was really for Capcom in the 2000s. And once in a while, people worry about can fighting games continue into the future. But I think as long as fighting games are based off popular IPs like Dragon Ball, that I think will be pretty much okay. You see a lot on Twitter of people asking for Naruto fighters or something like that. And as long as we keep on going this way, I think we have a bright future in fighting games. Okay, everybody, hopefully that made sense. As usual, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.